Hello, my name is Adela Licona, and I am the co-vice president of the board of directors for the Primavera Foundation here in Tucson, Arizona. I'd like to welcome you to this year's annual commemoration of those among us who have died while experiencing homelessness. Welcome, bienvenidos y bienvenidexis. I want to begin in the acknowledgement of the Tana'atam, the original caretakers of the land upon which this ceremony is taking place. I acknowledge the Pascuayaqui and the Yoeme, and I offer a deep honoring to all indigenous peoples who are and have been a part of this land. According to poet, scholar, and activist Gloria Anzaldúa, this land, these borderlands, are spaces of both a gentle coming together and a violent crash. They're lands of historic and ongoing dispossession and displacement. In other words, we live in a place rooted in the production of the conditions of homelessness, situated in a nation whose government does not prioritize basic human rights, especially for the most marginalized among us. This service happens annually on or around the longest night of the year, the winter solstice. 2020 marks the 30th annual National Homeless Persons Memorial Day. We undertake this ceremony simultaneously and in solidarity with many communities across the United States and Puerto Rico. Our ceremony acknowledges the deaths and commemorates the lives of the homeless members of our community, our friends, our families, our neighbors, including those whose names we may not have known, those we may have passed on the street or even in desert washes, in parks or parked cars, on storefront stoops, even those we likely did not see moving, migrating, trying to make their way across a hostile desert terrain. We're here to remember all of those dispossessed and displaced who died this year across southern Arizona because they did not have a safe place to call home. This year's ceremony is taking place in the face of sustained anti-immigrant sentiments and policies with particularly deadly consequences for LGB and trans migrants, in the face of an ongoing pandemic with communities of color and those living in poverty experiencing disproportionate rates of hospitalization and deaths, and in the face of the looming expiration of eviction moratoria and unemployment benefits, again with disproportionate consequences for communities of color. What I've sketched here is a consolidation of powerful forces threatening a winter of exploding houselessness and another year of deadly consequences. At Primavera, we believe it's urgent before us to take action. We begin by taking the time to commemorate and the care to remember, to say their names. And we do so de todo corazón. Of course, tragically, we cannot name everyone who died this year while experiencing homelessness. But what we can do is name those whose names we know and acknowledge those whose names we don't. We can let this lifting of their names, together with the fact of their life and the lamentable fact of their death, call us to collective right action, to practice a politics of active refusal so that this will not be the start of another 30 years of growing homelessness. We're here then to raise our voices together, to speak the unspeakable, to share memories, to acknowledge homelessness as an avoidable injustice, and to reaffirm our commitment to continue to fighting to end it. Thank you for being here, y muchas gracias.
This year has found many of us sheltering in place in the safety of our own homes. We have transformed these spaces into our offices, our children's classrooms, and for some of us, our sanctuaries and houses of worship. And as we have found refuge from a global pandemic beneath our roofs, perhaps at no other time have we been so aware, so painfully aware of the deep fissures in our society that have left some with no place to shelter. They have been left out in the heat of the summer, in the chill of the winter, more vulnerable than ever before, not just because of exposure to the elements and a lack of basic needs, but now vulnerable to the COVID-19 virus. And as the death rate climbs every day, we are overwhelmed by the loss of life. And this pain is exacerbated by our inability to gather together physically to engage in the traditions and rituals that allow us to grieve those that we have lost. But just as we do every year as a community, we pause to remember. We pause to grieve our homeless siblings who died this year. Though we cannot gather physically together at the cemetery, we are united in time and space by a powerful spirit of solidarity and compassion, and a commitment to building a community where no one dies on our streets or in our desert. It is appropriate that this is the time of year when those from the Christian tradition recall the sacred story of the days when the Holy Family was without shelter. In churches across our nation, the faithful will hear those familiar words of Scripture. In those days, a decree went out from Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered, and all went to their own towns to be registered. And Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and the family of David. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged and who was expecting a child. And while they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child. And she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in bands of cloth and laid him in a manger because there was no place for them in the inn. In hearing these words of Scripture, we are called to reflect on the fact that when Christ was born, there was no room for him in this world. Born to parents who had no home, they begged from door to door in Bethlehem for a place to stay and were told over and over again, there is no room for you. This chorus of exclusion, of rejection, continues to be heard by too many people today. In fact, our nation has been so committed to this narrative of no room that we erected militarized walls on our border. We put into place protocols that leave asylum seekers languishing at the doors of our nation. In a myriad of ways, we say to our neighbors in the South, there is no room for you here. Not in our neighborhoods, not in our schools, not in our churches, not in our workplaces. But for those who seek safety, for those who seek a better life, for those who seek family reunification, there is no wall high enough to deter that love and commitment. And so against the chorus of there is no room, they've traveled through our desert searching for home. And in this time, we remember those who did not find home. We remember those 181 siblings who died this year crossing our border. Walking through treacherous land, they stumbled and fell. They thirsted and found no water. They hungered and found no food. They died searching for home, looking for welcome. And we mourn each and every lost soul whose dream for a better life died in our desert. And we commit ourselves again to the struggle to build a world in which there is room for all of us, recognizing that when we make room for the migrant, we make room for Christ himself. The poet Anne Weems writes, "In each heart lies a Bethlehem, an inn where we must ultimately answer whether there is room or not. The truth is that there is room for every single one of us, documented and undocumented, housed and unhoused, migrant and indigenous." And so in the words of the poet, we faithfully proclaim that into this silent night, as we make our weary way, we know not where, And just when the night becomes its darkest and we cannot see our path, just then is when the angels rush in, their hands full of stars. May we be guided by those that we are remembering in this time, our angels, who now carry in their hands the light of stars. And may this light guide us into a world with room for all. And may our 181 migrant siblings now shelter in peace within the embrace of their Creator. Amen.
Hello, I am Rick Sumner, Manager of Staffing Services at Primavera Works, the employment faction of Primavera Foundation. Myself and a coworker are going to read the names to honor, celebrate, and remember those in our community in Southern Arizona who died this past year in our deserts, streets, and parks, because they did not have a safe place to call home. Frederick Smith, Violet Range, Amber Watkins, Amber Sorrell, William Sanger, Danny Sperling, Randy Tacker, John Faze, Daniel Pence, Tommy Millette, Timothy Hayden, John Holendonsky, Eugene Marino, Casey Wright, Darrell Bueno, Daniel Sweeney, Thomas Callender, Craig Renault, Demetrius Brown,
My name is Greg Hess. I'm a physician, a forensic pathologist, and chief medical examiner for Pima County here in Tucson. And it's my pleasure to speak again this year for the Primavera Foundation and talk a little bit about homeless deaths in Pima County in 2020. The medical examiner's office has been running the indigent internment program for Pima County for a couple years now. So we're relatively new to this process, but it has given us the opportunity to learn more about, deaths that are referred to the government for indigent internment. And what that means is a certain segment of people that die in the community, we either can't find next of kin for, and sometimes homeless folks fit into that category, or we are able to find next of kin, but the next of kin doesn't have the financial resources to provide for funeral arrangements for that person. So a certain percentage of people that go through that program are homeless. In 2019, there was 52 people that we classified as homeless that were referred through our indigent internment program. In 2020, it's 69. So we have had an increase in that way. If we're just talking about homeless deaths that are reported to the medical examiner's office in the community, clearly not all of those go through our indigent internment program. And in 2020, we had 165 people that died in the community that were referred to us that we had categorized as homeless. And we had certified 132 actually of those death certifications. So that's kind of interesting. It's a statistic that we have not necessarily kept track of before in the past. And just to back up a little bit, we don't really know how many homeless people die in Pima County on an annual basis. We know how many people total die, but not all of those people are referred to the medical examiner's office. So most people that die as the result of some type of medical condition that they're being treated and followed by a physician in the community for that condition. And it's that physician in the community that certifies their deaths. So certainly there are going to be people that are on and off homeless that are being certified by community providers. And then there's that segment that are reported to the medical examiner's office because they don't either have a primary care physician or they die of something non-natural. So that's really what our role is to certify those deaths. And then again, we have the overlap with the indigent interment program to make sure that people are interred, respectfully, that again, we can't find next of kin for, to step forward and make those arrangements, or they're not financially able to do that. So it's kind of an issue that's hard to get a full understanding of, the total number of these types of deaths. But we certainly saw an uptick in 2020 in comparison to 2019 for the total number of deaths that were reported to us of people that we believe to be homeless and people being referred through the indigent internment program. I guess that makes sense. There is overall increased mortality in 2020. We have been challenged by, this pandemic that's been ongoing for the majority of the year. Certainly that's why we're holding this on Zoom this year rather than out at the county cemetery. So everybody understands that. But, it's a real problem, and it's a group of people in need. And it's just nice to be given the opportunity to take a few moments to remember them.
Here we go. That was excellent. Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that? Is there anything in the future that you'd like to see, like steps taken that would make your situation better?
Well, in terms of steps taken, we're kind of the objective number people for the county, and try to be communicative about the deaths that are reported to us, what the cause and manner of deaths are, what the sex and age and all those demographics, to provide accurate information to who's ever interested in that population group. So that's really been one of our goals in 2020, because again, this category of homeless deaths in Pima County is a little bit of a new project for us at the medical examiner's office, because we took over the indigent internment program, and we've trying to be more careful about making sure that we're labeling people correctly into different categories, and sometimes we don't know for certain what people's status are, but really just trying to get information out to the community that's accurate, and so that other people can have reasonable information to try to make decisions and potentially take initiatives to, combat the problem that they're interested in. One of those being people that are homeless.
Mi nombre es Celia Mendívil, trabajo en el Departamento de Vivienda en la Fundación Primavera. Mi compañero y yo vamos a leer los nombres para honrar, celebrar y recordar a aquellas personas que en nuestra comunidad suroeste de Arizona que fallecieron este año en nuestros desiertos, calles y parques, simplemente porque ellos no tenían un lugar al cual llamarle hogar. This year in Pima County, there were reports of 171 deaths of people migrating. One of the 171 people who died in the desert, only 45 were identified. Este año en el condado de Pima hubo reportes de 171 muertes de personas emigrantes. Solamente 45 de ellas fueron identificadas. Vamos a nombrar también los nombres de ellos para honrarlos y hacerles honor. Sus nombres fueron, their names were, Pedro Ruiz Gómez, Gilberto Salazar García, Roberto García, Sabino Sica Alvarado, Richard Simpson, Jeremías Soto Ambrosio, Rogelio Velázquez López, José Villalobos Castillo, Juliana Zapata Corrales, Duval Zúñiga Oceguera, Uriel Aburto Jiménez, Carlos Aguilar Arreola, Marvi Alvarado Pérez, Santos Alonso Castro, José Antonio Guillermo, Benjamín Bárcenas Hernández, Constantino Bautista Cruz, Ángel Calderón Valderas, Ángel Camacho Arellanes, Juan Cortés Trejo, Marcelino Díaz Gómez, César Gabriel Velázquez, Adrián García López, Jovita García Ortiz, Horacio García Robles.
Buenas tardes. I'm your Ward 1 Council Member, Lane Santa Cruz, for the City of Tucson. Thank you to everyone who has spoken today. I want to express my condolences to the friends and family of those who died facing homelessness in the past year. Thank you to Primavera for the invitation to speak, but more importantly, for the invitation to listen. The telling and listening of stories of loss and of the injustice that exists around us is often painful. But if we avoid acknowledging those who died without a home, then we legitimize the injustice. Nobody deserves to die on our streets. We say that it takes a village to raise us. Well, it also takes a village to fail us. Our systems that are supposed to provide a safety net for our most vulnerable are failing us. When community members die on our streets, it is our responsibility to address the root causes. This memorial is important because it brings to light the stories that live in the shadows. We're unable to meet in person today for obvious reasons, yet while the pandemic has impacted all of our lives, it has especially impacted those experiencing homelessness. This pandemic has brought a crisis within a crisis, and with the end of the year fast approaching, with federal assistance and the state's eviction moratorium coming to an end, I want to use this opportunity to continue to urge Governor Doug Ducey and Congress to step up and prevent the surge of evictions and homelessness. Lastly, I want to acknowledge my dear friend, Pima County Supervisor Richard Elias, for his commitment to our community. He was at every memorial that I can remember and always showed up for the most vulnerable in our community. And like everybody else that we're acknowledging today, que en paz descansen. Thank you.
Randall Wilcoxon, Wesley Dunn, Jonathan Leathers, Thomas Quillen, Herbert Whitwell, Philip Schmidt, Sean Foley, Jorman Knight, Brian Phelps, Jay Pendergraft, Michael Mann, Mark Gillian, Earl Corcoran, Curtis Fanning, Kimberly Chadwick, Leroy Vinson, Nancy Purcell, Ronald Belinky, James Matthews, Rachel Majested, Alan Ulick.
Hi, my name is Ursula Harrison, and I'm the program assistant at Casa Paloma. I work specifically with the drop-in participants. Morgan Sersha Murphy was a drop-in participant at Casa Paloma since 2018. She was a friend to many of the ladies and would get a huge welcoming as if she was Norm on the television show Cheers. Morgan was selfless and always put others first. There were moments when she would yell, cry, and get frustrated, and no one knew the pain she was in. She always downplayed her pain and would always say it was her bruised ribs. Morgan passed away tragically after battling substance abuse for many years on January 11, 2020. She was born Nathan Thomas Murphy and grew up in Boston, where she studied art in college and would continue her artistic expression throughout her life. She also had her certificate in small engine repair and additionally was awarded an Associate of Science degree in Substance Abuse Counseling in 2010 and went on to the University of Massachusetts. Bachelor's program in Community Development with a focus on substance abuse. Unfortunately, her own struggles and addiction made her unable to complete her studies. Morgan was also a musician and played sax in addition to bass guitar. But her first love was for machines, be it old cars, Vespa scooters, or bicycles. She produced some very creative custom machines. Morgan's generosity to others, her loving spirit, and sharp wit will be deeply missed. If one thing can be taken away from this story, you are not alone, and there are people who truly care for you that notice the little things in life. Please ask for help.
Ricardo García Santana, Jorge Garza Contreras, Diego Guzmán Girón, José López Guillén, Jesús López Patistán, Mario López Gómez, Félix López Hernández, Agileo López Osorio, Juan López Valenzuela, Ferlandi Lucas Martínez, José Martínez Martínez, Efraín Medrano Morales, Humberto Mendoza Ventura, Jaser Merlo Mesa, Cirilo Morales Vaca, Gildardo Morales Morales, Jesús Pañuelas Moreno, Donald Pérez López, Valeriana Pérez Rojas y José Rebollo Torres.
My name is Emma Hockenberg, and I am the Program Manager of the Homelessness Intervention and Prevention Programs with the Primavera Foundation. I'm going to be reading a statement on behalf of one of our team members, Brandon Davis, about Steve Roberts, who passed away earlier this year. I met Steve and his wife, Nancy, shortly after I started volunteering for Primavera. It was only about a month later that his wife, Nancy, passed away unexpectedly. Steve stopped drinking for about a year after that. He became a regular at HIP. During that time, Steve spent most mornings in the HIP courtyard reading old westerns and smoking his hand-rolled tobacco. Those of us who worked at HIP during that time had the honor of getting to know Steve. He had all the reason in the world to be spiteful and angry, but he seemed to rise above his situation. He was always ready to help someone with directions or questions about services. He was always willing to share his knowledge, asking nothing in return. When arguments broke out between clients, he would often step in and diffuse the situation with a voice of reason or a joke. Steve was a bit of a rebel. I think his anthem was My Way, the Sid Vicious version, and he certainly fought to do things his way, regardless of the consequences. When it came to other people, he was dependable. If he said he would be somewhere, he would be there, even if he had to wake up before the sun came up and walk in the rain. Steve needed people. He needed the distraction of others and knowing that he treated everyone like an old friend. No matter what he was going through, he would never let anyone feel sorry for him or worry about him. He only wanted to leave people with a smile. Steve never wanted anything, even when he was sleeping outside the church, storing his belongings in a trash can. He never complained. He kept his spot behind the church for a year after he got into housing. In some ways, I believe he felt more at home on the street than he did in an apartment with a ceiling that obstructed his view of the stars. There's something missing with Steve's passing. I swear I see him a few times a week walking down the street, sitting at a bus stop. I would like to believe he is still out there. Every year, we literally lose people to the streets. They spend their days in the washes, in alleys, just out of sight for most. All of us at HIP have become witnesses to these lives of so many who have lived and died invisible on our streets. Thank you.
Olivia Mena, Richard Simpson, Mario Olivas, Michael Black, Gloria Figley, Charles Evans, Francisco García, Carl Brown, Jesús Betancourt, Denise Morgan, Joy Davis, Alfred Nelson, Tay Bell, Mary McReynolds, Carrie Kelly, David Maldonado, Wendy Rhodes, Kenneth Rhodes, John Thurp, Gary Spear, Christopher Grass, Daniel Oland, Ali Freeman, Leanne Ferguson, Ellen Hook, Nicole Meyers, Cirilo Morales Baca, Andrés Gómez, y Terry Emmer.
Thank you for joining us as we remember those who we have lost this past year while experiencing homelessness. Tonight marks the winter solstice, the first day of winter and the longest night of the year. With temperatures dropping into the 30s, it is unconscionable to think people would have to suffer through a night freezing because they did not have a safe place to call home. Please take a moment to remember the less fortunate in our community. The mission of the Primavera Foundation is to provide pathways out of poverty through safe, affordable housing, workforce development, and neighborhood revitalization. Please join us in our mission. If you would like to find ways you can help us end homelessness, visit our website at www.primavera.org. Again, thank you for joining us and helping us remember and honor the community members we have lost this year experiencing homelessness.